The snow fell like confetti celebrating a party I wasn't invited to. Christmas Eve. The kind of night that's supposed to taste like cinnamon and feel like forgiveness. But there I was, standing in my kitchen with chapped hands and a heart that felt older than my 38 years, watching my son Lucas, my beautiful, brilliant 17-year-old son, stare at the empty plate in front of him. I'd given him the last of the chicken, the good piece, the one with actual meat on it, not just cartilage and hope. I'd told him I'd already eaten, which was a lie I'd perfected over the years. A mother's lie. The kind that doesn't count because it's wrapped in love. But Lucas had been watching me more carefully than I realized. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked in that way that told me he was about to cry. "Did you ever regret feeding me instead of yourself?" The wooden spoon I was holding clattered against the pot. The sound echoed in our tiny apartment like a gunshot. Outside, carolers were singing about joy to the world. But inside our four walls, the question hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't put out. I turned to face him. This child I'd grown inside my body when I was barely more than a child myself. This boy whose father had left before learning how to pronounce his name correctly. This young man who'd watched me work 3 jobs, skip meals, wear the same coat for 6 winters, and never once complain. "What kind of question is that, baby?" I asked, but my voice betrayed me. It trembled. Lucas stood up from the table, and I saw it then. Really saw it. He wasn't my little boy anymore. He was taller than me now, with his father's shoulders and my mother's eyes. And he was looking at me the way you look at someone when you've finally put all the pieces together and the picture breaks your heart. "I found the bills, Mom. The medical bills. The ones you've been hiding under your mattress." His voice was steady now, but tears were streaming down his face. "You've been sick. You've been sick for months. And you didn't tell me. You didn't go to the doctor because you were using that money to feed me, to keep the lights on, to buy my textbooks." The world tilted. I gripped the counter to steady myself, but nothing felt steady anymore. Nothing felt safe. "Lucas, that's not—" "Don't lie to me," he interrupted, and it was the first time he'd ever cut me off. The first time he'd ever raised his voice to me. "Please, Mom, don't lie to me anymore. I need to know the truth. Did you ever regret it? Did you ever wish you'd chosen yourself instead of me?" And there it was. The question every mother fears, but never admits, exists. The question that lives in the dark corners of 3 a.m. when you're so tired your bones ache, and you wonder what your life would have been like if you'd made different choices. If you'd been selfish. If you'd been free. I looked at my son, this miracle, this masterpiece, this reason I'd learned what sacrifice actually means. And I realized something that made my chest tighten with a pain that had nothing to do with the illness I'd been hiding. He wasn't asking because he was ungrateful. He was asking because he felt guilty. Because somewhere along the way, this beautiful boy had started carrying the weight of my love like a burden instead of a gift. The Christmas lights outside our window blinked red and green, painting his tear-stained face in colors that reminded me of every holiday we'd survived together. Every Christmas morning when I'd made magic out of nothing. Every birthday cake I'd baked from scratch, because store-bought was a luxury we couldn't afford. Every night I'd held him and promised him that love was enough, even when I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "Sit down, Lucas," I said quietly. "It's time I told you the whole story." He sat, and I began. Sometimes the truth is the only gift worth giving. If you've ever had to choose between yourself and someone you love, subscribe to this channel and tell me what city you're listening from right now. Because tonight, I need to know I'm not alone. I was 21 when I found out I was pregnant. Not 21 and established. Not 21 with a degree and a plan. 21 and terrified, standing in a gas station bathroom with a plastic stick that had just rewritten my entire future in 2 pink lines. Marcus, your father, was 23 and beautiful and full of promises that dissolved like sugar in rain. When I told him, He looked at me like I'd just announced the end of the world. Maybe for him I had. He left 3 weeks later. Didn't say goodbye. Just stopped answering his phone until I got the message. I remember standing in the apartment we'd shared. Studio apartment, really. Barely big enough for 2 people. Definitely too small for 3. And feeling something I'd never felt before. Not sadness, not anger. Something deeper. Something that felt like drowning from the inside out. My mother had died 2 years earlier. Cancer. The kind that eats you from the inside while everyone watches helplessly. I dropped out of college to take care of her, and by the time she was gone, I had no degree, no money, and no idea how to start over. And now I was pregnant. I thought about ending it. God forgive me, but I did. I sat in that Planned Parenthood waiting room for 3 hours, my number clutched in my sweaty palm, listening to them call patients back one by one. A girl across from me was crying. Another one was sleeping. Another one looked like she'd already made peace with whatever decision she was about to make. But when they called my number, I couldn't stand up. My legs wouldn't work. Because somewhere between finding out and sitting in that chair, something had shifted. I'd felt you move. Just barely. Just a flutter. Like a butterfly trapped under my skin, asking for a chance. I walked out of that clinic knowing my life would never be easy again. But I also walked out knowing I'd never be alone. The first year was the hardest. I worked at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night, my belly growing rounder while my bank account stayed flat. I ate the leftovers customers didn't finish. I wore the same maternity dress until it literally fell apart in the wash. I slept on a mattress on the floor because I'd sold the bed frame to pay for prenatal vitamins. But I never regretted it. Not once. Not even when I went into labor 3 weeks early and the hospital bill arrived like a death sentence. You were born at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The nurse placed you in my arms, and I looked down at your tiny face. Eyes squeezed shut, mouth forming shapes like you were already trying to tell me your story. And I knew. I knew I would starve before I let you go hungry. I knew I would walk through fire if it meant keeping you warm. I knew that every hard choice I'd ever have to make would be easy because the answer would always be you. That's when the hunger started. Not physical hunger, though there was plenty of that too. This was different. This was the hunger of wanting to give you everything I never had. The hunger of watching other children with their 2-parent homes and their new shoes and their full refrigerators and swearing you'd have better. Somehow. Some way. I started skipping meals when you were 6 months old. Not every meal. Just breakfast. Then lunch. Then I'd eat whatever you didn't finish from your baby food jars. Sweet potatoes, mashed peas. I told myself it was practical. No waste. But the truth was simpler and sadder than that. There wasn't enough. There was never enough. And between the two of us, you were the one who deserved to be full. You grew. God, how you grew. Strong and curious and smart. So smart it scared me sometimes. You started reading at 4, writing stories at 6, asking questions I had to Google the answers to because I'd never finished college. And some of your questions were about things I'd never learned. Every milestone you hit felt like a victory. Every parent-teacher conference where they told me you were gifted and exceptional felt like proof that I was doing something right. Even if I was doing it on an empty stomach. Even if I was doing it in shoes held together with duct tape. The hunger became normal. I stopped noticing it most days. My body adjusted. Learned to run on fumes and determination. I'd eat 1 meal, dinner usually because that's when you could see me. And I'd make a show of how full I was, how satisfied, how I couldn't possibly eat another bite. You believed me because children believed their mothers. Because why would I lie about something like that? But Lucas, baby, here's what I need you to understand. I never went hungry. Because every time I fed you, I was fed too. Every time you grew stronger, I grew stronger. Every time you smiled with a full belly, mine felt full too. That's the part you don't understand yet. The part I couldn't explain until now. You were 12 when things started to change. Not bad change. At least not at first. Good change. Change that felt like finally, we might catch a break. I got promoted at the hospital where I'd been working as a janitor for 8 years. Administrative assistant position. Desk job. Better pay. Regular hours. The kind of job where I could sit down and not smell like bleach at the end of the day. We moved out of that basement apartment, the one where mushrooms grew in the bathroom corner and the landlord never fixed anything, into a real apartment. 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms. You got your own room for the first time in your life. I cried the day we moved in. Happy tears. The kind that taste different. You started middle school. Made the honor roll. Joined the robotics club. Started talking about college like it was something actually possible. Not just a fantasy we whispered about on hard nights. I let myself believe we'd made it. That the worst was over. That the years of struggle had been a season, not a permanent state. And now we were moving into something better. Something easier. That's when my body started betraying me. It started small. So small I ignored it. Fatigue that didn't go away after sleep. Headaches that wrapped around my skull like a vice. A persistent cough I blamed on the hospital's dry air. Weight loss I convinced myself was a good thing, finally dropping those extra pounds I'd been carrying. But then came the night I collapsed at work. I was filing papers, and suddenly the room tilted. The floor rose up to meet me. I woke up in the ER with a nurse taking my blood pressure and a doctor asking me when I'd last eaten a full meal. I lied, said I'd had breakfast. Said I was probably just dehydrated, said I'd been fighting a cold. He didn't believe me. Ordered a full panel of tests, blood work, scans, the kind of medical attention I'd been avoiding for years because I knew we couldn't afford it and I knew what they'd find. Malnutrition, severe anemia, damaged organs. A body that had been running on empty for so long it had started consuming itself. Ms. Richardson, the doctor said. And his voice had that tone. That careful, gentle tone doctors use when the news is bad and they're trying to figure out how to tell you your life is about to get complicated. When was the last time you ate 3 meals a day? I couldn't answer, because I couldn't remember. Years. Had it been years? Time had blurred together into an endless cycle of making sure you had enough, and somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten to save anything for myself. You need treatment, he continued. Supplements, possibly IV nutrition, and I'm seeing some concerning markers that suggest. I cut him off, asked how much it would cost, watched his expression change when he told me, felt my heart sink when I did the math and realized that treating me would mean sacrificing everything we'd just started to build, your robotics club fees, the new laptop you needed for school, the college fund I'd just started contributing to, $25 a month. But it was something. I left that hospital with a stack of prescriptions I never filled and a follow-up appointment I never kept. Instead, I got better at hiding, better at lying. I started eating in front of you more often. Small portions, just enough to be convincing. I bought vitamins from the dollar store and told myself they were just as good as the prescription kind. I wore more makeup to hide the dark circles. Smiled brighter to distract from how much weight I was losing. You were so focused on school, on your friends, on becoming who you were meant to be, that you didn't notice. And I was grateful for that. Grateful you were too busy living to watch me dying. Because that's what was happening. Slowly, quietly. My body was shutting down in increments so small that each day felt manageable, but when you added them all up, they spelled disaster. But here's the thing about mothers, Lucas. Here's the thing you're too young to understand but old enough to hear. We're experts at suffering in silence. We've been trained since birth to put everyone else first, to swallow our pain, to perform happiness even when we're breaking apart inside. And I was so good at it, so convincing. Even I almost believed I was fine, until I wasn't. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were grocery days, and I'd been pushing the cart through the store, mentally calculating every penny, when my vision started to blur. You were at robotics club. I had 2 hours to shop, get home, and start dinner before you got back. I was in the cereal aisle, standing there staring at the prices, trying to figure out if we could afford the brand you liked, or if we needed to go generic this week, when my legs gave out. I didn't fall dramatically. It wasn't like the movies. I just folded, like a paper doll, knees hitting linoleum, hands catching me at the last second. The cart rolling away slowly, squeaking. A woman rushed over. She was wearing a Christmas sweater with actual bells on it, and they jingled when she knelt down beside me. Ma'am, can you hear me? Someone call 911. I wanted to tell her no. Wanted to say I was fine, just tired, just needed a minute. But my mouth wouldn't work right. The words came out slurred. Wrong. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They lifted me onto a stretcher while curious shoppers formed a circle, their faces blurring together into a judgmental audience. I heard someone whisper, "Drugs, probably." Another voice. So sad. Right here in the grocery store. At the hospital, they ran more tests. Different doctors. Same concerned expressions. One of them, a young woman who couldn't have been much older than you are now, sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Ms. Richardson, your body is in crisis. Have you been eating?" "Yes," I lied. She pulled out my chart. "Your blood work says otherwise. You're severely malnourished. Your iron levels are critically low. Your organs are under significant stress. If you don't get treatment, proper treatment, you could die. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" I understood. I'd understood for months, maybe years, but understanding and being able to do something about it are two very different things. "I have a son," I said. "He's 17. He's going to college next year. He's brilliant. He has a future. And if I spend money on myself, I'm stealing from his future. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Her expression softened. "Who's taking care of you while you take care of him?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Because the answer was no one. The answer had always been no one. I was the only parent. The only provider. The only one standing between you and the world. And if I fell, there was no safety net. Just impact. They kept me overnight for observation. Gave me IV fluids and a meal that tasted like cardboard, but I forced myself to eat because they were watching. Made me promise to follow up with my primary care doctor. Made me promise a lot of things I knew I wouldn't be able to keep. I called you from the hospital. Told you I had to work late. Told you there was leftover pasta in the fridge. Told you I loved you and to make sure you did your homework. You believed me because you always believed me. When they discharged me the next morning, I had a folder full of instructions, referrals, and prescriptions. I threw it all away in the hospital parking lot. Every page. Every prescription. Every reminder that my body was failing because I'd made it fail. Because feeding you had always been more important than feeding myself. Because that's what mothers do. We carry our children's futures on our backs, even when our knees are buckling. We pretend we're strong even when we're breaking. We smile through the pain because their happiness is the only medicine that works. And if you're listening to this and you're a mother, you know exactly what I mean. Comment below if you've ever sacrificed your own health for your child. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Please, tell me I'm not alone. You found the bills 3 weeks before Christmas. I'd been so careful. So meticulous about hiding everything. The hospital bills, the collections notices, the prescription slips I'd never filled. I kept them all in a manila envelope under my mattress. Like hiding them there could somehow make them less real. But you'd been looking for your birth certificate, needed it for college applications, and I'd told you I thought it might be with my important documents. I was at work when you searched. I didn't know you'd found everything until I came home and saw your face. You were sitting on my bed, papers spread around you like evidence at a crime scene. Your hands were shaking. You'd been crying. I could see the red in your eyes, the way your face was blotchy and swollen. "Mom," you said, and your voice cracked. "What is this?" I stood in the doorway, still in my coat, still carrying my purse, and felt the weight of every lie I'd ever told you crash down on my shoulders. "Lucas, don't." You stood up, papers clutched in your fist. "Don't try to explain this away. Don't tell me it's fine. These bills are from 6 months ago. This one says final notice. This one's from a collections agency. Mom, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" I set my purse down slowly, took off my coat, bought myself time I didn't have. "It's complicated, baby." "No." You were crying again, angry tears this time. "No, it's not complicated. You're sick, and you're not getting treatment because why, Mom? Because you're spending the money on me? Because you think I'm more important than your life?" The truth hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. "You are more important," I said quietly. "You've always been more important." "That's insane!" You were shouting now, and you never shouted. Mom, I can't lose you. Do you understand that? I can't lose you. You're all I have. You're all I've ever had." I moved toward you, but you stepped back. That hurt more than anything. The physical distance you were putting between us. The way you were looking at me like I was a stranger. Like I was someone who'd betrayed you instead of someone who'd sacrificed everything for you. "I need you to understand something," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "Every choice I've made since the day I found out I was pregnant with you has been about giving you the best possible life. Every single choice, and I don't regret any of them. Even if it kills you?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. "Even then," I whispered. You collapsed onto the bed, head in your hands, shoulders shaking. I sat down beside you, not touching, just close, and for a long time neither of us spoke. Outside, the city hummed its usual song. Cars, sirens, the distant sound of someone's music. Life continuing around us while ours fell apart. "I can't watch you die," you finally said, your voice muffled against your palms. "I can't sit here and go to college and build a future knowing you gave up your life so I could have mine. Don't you see how that ruins everything? Don't you see how that makes every achievement feel like I killed you to get it?" And there it was. The fear I'd been running from. Not your anger, not your judgment, your guilt. The terrible weight of realizing that my love had become your burden. "Lucas, look at me." You lifted your head. Your eyes were red and exhausted and filled with a pain no 17-year-old should have to carry. "This is not your fault," I said firmly. "None of this is your fault. I chose you. Every day I chose you. And I would choose you again. 1,000 times. 1,000,000 times. Do you understand? But I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. That's what love is. That's what being a mother means. It means your happiness becomes my happiness. Your future becomes my future. And yes, sometimes that means sacrifice. Sometimes that means going without. But I was never going without, baby. Don't you see? Every time I fed you, every time I kept you warm, every time I saw you smile, that was my meal. That was what sustained me. You shook your head, tears streaming down your face. That's not how bodies work, Mom. You can't survive on love alone. Can't you? I asked softly. The week after you found the bills, you did something I never expected. You got a job. I came home from work on Tuesday to find you sitting at our small kitchen table with a printed schedule and a determined expression I recognized because it was the same expression I saw in the mirror every morning. I start Friday, you said before I could even ask. Grocery store, evenings and weekends, 18 hours a week. It won't interfere with school. My stomach dropped. Lucas, no, Mom, Listen, I did the math. You pushed a piece of paper across the table. It was covered in your neat handwriting, numbers, and calculations. Between my paycheck, and if you actually use your medical insurance, which your employer provides, I checked, we can cover your treatment. Not comfortably, but we can do it. We'll have to cut back on some things, but no. The word came out sharper than I intended. Absolutely not. You're not dropping your extracurriculars and working to pay for my medical bills. You're 17. You should be focused on school, on college applications, on what? You interrupted, and there was steel in your voice now. On building a future while my mother dies? That's your plan? You want me to go to college and study and succeed, knowing that you're at home getting sicker because you're too stubborn to accept help? It's not about being stubborn. Then what is it about? You stood up, and suddenly you were towering over me, this child who'd grown into a man when I wasn't looking. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like pride. It looks like you'd rather die than admit you can't do everything alone. Well, guess what, Mom? You're not alone. You have me. And I'm not going to sit here and watch you kill yourself because you think you have to be some kind of superhero. The word superhero broke something in me, because that's what you'd called me when you were little. When I'd come home exhausted from working double shifts and still found energy to help with homework, to read bedtime stories, to be present. My mom's a superhero, you'd tell your friends. She can do anything. And I'd believed it too. Or at least I'd believed I had to keep pretending I believed it. Baby, your college fund? Screw my college fund. You were crying again, but angry now. Defiant. What good is college if you're dead? What good is any of it if you're not here? Don't you get it? You're not just my mother, you're my best friend. You're the only family I have. And I need you to be selfish for once in your goddamn life and choose yourself. Please, please choose yourself. I looked at this young man I'd raised, this miracle I'd grown from nothing, and I saw it clearly. He wasn't asking me to give up. He was asking me to let him love me the way I'd always loved him. Completely. Selflessly. With sacrifice. But I was the mother. I was supposed to be the one making sacrifices. Lucas, we're going to the doctor on Monday, you said, and it wasn't a question. It was a statement. You're going to start treatment. I'm going to work. And we're going to figure this out together. Because that's what family does. Okay? I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell you that you were too young to carry this weight. That I was supposed to protect you, not the other way around. That your job was to be young and carefree and focused on your future, not worried about keeping me alive. But the truth was, I was tired. So tired. Tired of lying. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending my body wasn't falling apart. Tired of being strong when all I wanted was to collapse. Okay, I whispered. You exhaled like you'd been holding your breath for days. Came around the table and wrapped your arms around me. This boy who'd once fit entirely in my arms, now holding me up with his strength. We're going to be okay, you said into my hair. I promise, Mom. We're going to be okay. And standing there in our tiny kitchen with my son's arms around me, I let myself believe it. Just for a moment. Just enough to keep going. If you've ever had your child become your caretaker, if you've ever had to accept help when all you've ever done is give it, drop a heart emoji below. Because this part of the story, this is where everything changes. The oncologist's waiting room smelled like artificial lemon and fear. I held your hand while we waited, even though you were 17 and probably too old for hand-holding. You didn't pull away. When they called my name, you stood up with me, came back with me, sat in the consultation room while the doctor, Dr. Palmer, a woman with kind eyes and terrible news, explained what the scans had found. Cancer. Not the kind my mother had, but close enough that the word itself felt like a curse passed down through generations. Stomach cancer. Stage 3. Treatable, but aggressive. Would require surgery, chemotherapy, complete restructuring of my diet and lifestyle. Why didn't you come in sooner? Doctor, Palmer asked, and there was no judgment in her voice, just genuine confusion. These symptoms would have been present for months, maybe longer. I couldn't answer. Couldn't explain the calculus of poverty and motherhood. Couldn't make her understand that choosing between my health and my son's future had never felt like a choice at all. You answered for me. She was taking care of me. She's always been taking care of me. Dr. Palmer looked between us, this 17-year-old boy and his dying mother, and something in her expression shifted, softened. Well, she said gently, now we're going to take care of her. Both of us. The treatment plan she outlined was brutal. Surgery to remove part of my stomach, 6 months of chemotherapy, weekly appointments, special nutrition supplements, medications, physical therapy. The list went on, each item another brick in the wall of impossibility we were supposed to climb. The cost, I started to say. We'll figure it out, you interrupted. Your hand tightened around mine. We'll figure it out, Mom. And somehow we did. The hospital had financial assistance programs I'd been too proud to apply for before. You worked every shift they'd give you at the grocery store. I cut my hours at work, doctor's orders, and filed for temporary disability. Your school offered a scholarship that covered some of your extracurricular costs. The church I hadn't been to in years organized a fundraiser. People showed up in ways I never expected. Neighbors brought meals. Co-workers donated PTO hours so I wouldn't lose my job. Your robotics club held a bake sale. Strangers on the internet, after you'd posted about our situation in a moment of desperation I hadn't known about until after, sent small donations that added up to something real. It wasn't enough to make everything easy, but it was enough to make everything possible. The surgery happened 2 days before Thanksgiving. You sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, texting me updates even though I was unconscious and couldn't read them. When I woke up in recovery, you were there, looking exhausted and terrified and so young it broke my heart all over again. Hey, baby, I whispered, my voice raw from the breathing tube. Hey, Mom. You tried to smile, but it trembled at the edges. How are you feeling? Like someone removed part of my stomach. You laughed, but it came out as a sob. Don't joke. Please don't joke right now. I'm okay, I said. And this time it wasn't a lie. I was okay. I was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. Chemo started 2 weeks later. I'd heard horror stories, the nausea, the exhaustion, the way it makes you feel like you're dying while it's supposedly saving you. And yes, it was hard. Harder than anything I'd ever done. Harder than single motherhood. Harder than poverty. Harder than years of starvation. But here's what the stories don't tell you. I wasn't alone this time. You learned to cook, really cook, not just ramen and frozen pizza. You made soups from scratch, gentle on my traumatized stomach. You researched nutrition and meal planning like it was an AP class. You held my hair back when I got sick. You drove me to appointments even though you'd only had your license for 6 months. You sat with me during infusions, doing homework while poison dripped into my veins and killed the thing trying to kill me. You became my caretaker, my nurse, my cheerleader, my reason to keep fighting when the treatment made me want to give up. And I hated it. God, I hated it. Because you were supposed to be young and carefree and worried about normal teenage things, not watching your mother wither and struggle and fight for her life. But I also loved it. Because for the first time in 17 years, I wasn't carrying everything alone. For the first time, I was letting myself be loved the way I'd always loved you. Unconditionally, sacrificially, without keeping score. And that's the real cure, isn't it? Not the chemo or the surgery or the medication. It's letting yourself be held when you've spent a lifetime holding everyone else. Subscribe if you understand. Like if you've ever had to learn this lesson the hard way. Which brings us back to Christmas Eve. To that question. To the moment everything I'd been trying to protect you from came crashing down anyway. Did you ever regret feeding me instead of yourself? I pulled out the chair across from you and sat down. The chicken on your plate was getting cold. The apartment was decorated with dollar store Christmas lights and handmade ornaments from your childhood. Everything felt fragile and precious, like a snow globe someone might shake. Let me tell you a story, I said, and I need you to listen all the way through before you say anything, okay? You nodded, tears still streaming down your face. When I was pregnant with you, I was so scared, terrified. I was broke and alone and had no idea how I was going to raise a child. There were days, so many days, when I thought about giving you up. Adoption. There were families who wanted babies. Families with money and 2 parents and houses with yards. Families who could give you everything I couldn't. Your eyes widened. I'd never told you this before. Never admitted that I'd considered any path that didn't lead to us. But then you were born, I continued, and they put you in my arms, and you opened your eyes and looked at me. Actually looked at me, like you were seeing me, really seeing me. And I knew with absolute certainty that no one else could love you the way I loved you. No one else could fight for you the way I would fight for you. And more than that, I knew that you were the reason I'd been put on this earth. That everything I'd gone through, losing my mom, dropping out of school, being abandoned by your father, all of it had been leading me to you. I reached across the table and took your hands in mine. They were bigger than mine now, stronger, but they still fit perfectly. So when you ask me if I ever regretted feeding you instead of myself, here's the truth. I never saw it as a choice. Because feeding you was feeding myself. Every meal you ate, I felt full. Every time you grew stronger, I felt stronger. Every smile, every laugh, every accomplishment. Those sustained me in ways food never could. But you got sick, you said, your voice breaking. You got sick because you weren't eating enough. Because you were giving me everything and keeping nothing for yourself. That's not sustainable. That's not love. That's martyrdom, I suggested. Self-destruction. Unhealthy codependence. I've heard all the terms the therapist Dr. Palmer made me see used. And maybe she's right. Maybe I took it too far. Maybe I should have asked for help sooner. Maybe I should have been more honest about what we were facing instead of trying to carry it all alone. I squeezed your hands. But Lucas, baby, here's what I need you to understand. I wasn't suffering. Or rather, the suffering wasn't the point. The point was you. The point was always you. And yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I should have taken better care of myself. But I would make those same choices again, I said. My voice steady now, certain. Maybe I'd be smarter about it. Maybe I'd ask for help earlier. But I would still choose you. Every single time. Lan, you pulled your hands away and stood up, pacing the small kitchen like a caged animal. That's not fair, Mom. You're putting this impossible weight on me. You're telling me that my existence cost you your health, maybe your life, and then saying you'd do it all again? How am I supposed to live with that? The same way I lived with loving you, I said quietly. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One breath at a time. You stopped pacing and turned to face me, and in that moment, I saw all 17 years of your life flash across your face. The infant who cried in the middle of the night. The toddler who learned to walk by holding onto our second-hand couch. The kindergartner who cried on the first day of school because he didn't want to leave me. The middle schooler who started to understand that we were poor, that other kids had things we couldn't afford. The teenager who was brilliant and kind, and so much better than the circumstances he was born into. I feel guilty every day, you whispered. Every single day. I see the way you work, the way you sacrifice, the way you pretend everything's fine when I know it's not. And I feel like I'm this this burden you've been carrying for 17 years, and you're too stubborn or too loving or too something to put me down. My heart shattered. This was my worst fear realized. Not that you'd be ungrateful, but that you'd feel guilty for being loved. Come here, I said softly. You hesitated, then moved back to the table and sat down. You want to know the real truth? I asked. The truth that therapists and social workers and well-meaning people with comfortable lives will never understand? You nodded. Being your mother saved my life, not destroyed it. Saved it. You looked confused, so I continued. When I found out I was pregnant, I was lost, completely lost. I had no purpose, no direction, no reason to get up in the morning. I was drifting through life, working dead-end jobs, watching other people build futures while I just existed. And then you came along, and suddenly everything had meaning. Suddenly, I had a reason to fight, a reason to survive, a reason to become better than I was. I leaned forward, holding your gaze. You didn't make my life harder, Lucas. You made my life worth living. Every sacrifice felt like a privilege. Every hard day felt like it mattered. Because I was building something. I was raising someone extraordinary. And that sense of purpose, that mission, that's what kept me alive all these years. But now you have cancer, you said. And the word still felt like a curse in your mouth. Now you're sick because of choices you made to take care of me. No, I said firmly. I'm sick because bodies sometimes fail. Because genetics are cruel. Because my mother had cancer. And maybe I was always going to have cancer. But I'm alive. I'm fighting. I'm getting treatment. Because of you. Don't you see? If I didn't have you, I would have ignored those symptoms forever. I would have let myself die quietly because what would be the point of fighting? But I have you. And that means I have something worth living for. You were crying again, but differently now. Softer. Like something was breaking open instead of breaking apart. I'm scared, you admitted. I'm so scared of losing you. I know, baby. I know. And I'm scared that I'll spend the rest of my life feeling guilty. That every good thing that happens to me will be tainted by the knowledge of what it cost you. I stood up and moved around the table, kneeling beside your chair so we were eye level. Then let me tell you what I need from you. What I really need. You looked at me, waiting. I need you to be happy. I need you to go to college and study hard and fall in love and make mistakes and build a life that's big and beautiful and full. I need you to eat without guilt, to succeed without shame, to take up space in the world without apologizing, because that, your happiness, your success, your joy, that's what makes everything worth it. That's the return on my investment. That's my reward. But what about you? You asked. What about your happiness? Your happiness is my happiness, I said simply. That's not codependence or martyrdom. That's just love. That's what it means to be a mother. Your joy is my joy. Your future is my future. And when you do great things, when you change the world the way I know you will, I'll be there watching, and I'll think, I helped make that. I sacrificed sleep and meals and comfort and health, and I made that brilliant, beautiful man. And I'll be so proud I could burst. You slid off the chair and wrapped your arms around me, and we stayed there on the kitchen floor, holding each other while the Christmas lights blinked and the chicken got cold and the world kept turning. I love you so much, you whispered into my shoulder. I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever understand. At least until you have children of your own. Then you'll get it. You pulled back and looked at me with red eyes and a watery smile. So you never regretted it? Not even once? I cupped your face in my hands. These hands that had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, held you through every stage of your life. Not even once, I said. Not for a single second. You are the best thing I ever made. The best choice I ever made. and I would starve 1,000 times over if it meant keeping you fed. Well, you don't have to anymore, you said, your voice stronger now. Because we're doing this together. We're both eating. We're both taking care of ourselves. Deal? I smiled through my own tears. Deal. Good. You stood up and pulled me to my feet. Now let's heat up this chicken and eat it together. Both of us. Full plates. Because we're a team now, Mom. And teams don't let each other go hungry. Some conversations change everything. Some moments become the hinge that your whole life swings on. If you've ever had a moment like this with someone you love, comment below and tell me about it. Because we all need to know we're not alone in these hard, beautiful, complicated moments of being human. The months that followed weren't easy. Let me be clear about that. Cancer treatment is brutal, and recovery is slow, and learning to accept help after a lifetime of giving it is harder than anyone tells you. But we did it. Together. You kept your job at the grocery store, but we negotiated a schedule that didn't destroy your grades. You still made honor roll. Still got into robotics competitions. Still applied to colleges with scholarship packages that made my heart soar and ache simultaneously. I went to every treatment, took every pill, ate every meal the nutritionist prescribed, even when my rebuilt stomach protested. Went to therapy and talked about martyrdom and self-worth and all the things I'd been avoiding for 17 years. Dr. Palmer became more than my oncologist. She became my ally, my cheerleader, the voice of reason when I tried to rush back to work too soon or skip a follow-up appointment because we needed the money for something else. Your son needs you alive more than he needs anything else, she reminded me constantly. Everything else is negotiable. Your health is not. The cancer responded to treatment. Not perfectly. It never is with stage 3. But well enough that after surgery and 6 months of chemo, the scans came back with the words we'd been praying for. No evidence of disease. I cried in the examination room. You cried too, your arms around me, both of us shaking with relief and gratitude and the bone-deep exhaustion of having fought so hard for so long. We did it. You kept saying, Mom, we did it. And we had. But more than beating cancer, we'd learned something more important. We'd learned how to be a family differently, not mother as martyr and child as recipient, but two people who loved each other enough to be honest about their needs, to ask for help, to lean on each other. You graduated high school that June with honors. I sat in the audience, thinner than I'd been, with hair just starting to grow back from chemo, wearing a dress that hung loose because my body was still learning how to process food properly, and watched you walk across that stage with tears streaming down my face. When they called your name, you looked right at me, pointed, mouthed, I love you, Mom. And I knew with absolute certainty that everything had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every hungry night, every moment of pain. Because that young man on that stage, brilliant and kind and strong, was my legacy, my masterpiece, my reason for everything. You got into college, full scholarship to an engineering program 3 states away, good school, great opportunities, the kind of future I'd always dreamed of for you. And when you told me, I did something I'd never done before. I celebrated without any bitterness about the cost, without any hidden pain about what it had taken to get there. Just pure, uncomplicated joy. I'm so proud of you, I said, and I meant it with every cell of my healing body. I couldn't have done it without you, you said. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. The summer before you left for college, we made new memories. Not the kind built on sacrifice and survival, but on actual joy. We went to the beach, first time in years. We ate at restaurants without calculating every penny. We saw movies. We laughed. I gained weight. Healthy weight. My hair grew back curly, which was new and surprising. The doctors continued monitoring me closely, but each appointment brought better news. Remission was holding. My body was healing, I was learning to eat like someone who deserved nourishment, not just someone stealing scraps to survive. And you blossomed in ways I'd never imagined possible once the weight of worry lifted. You made plans with friends, went to parties, had a summer romance with a girl named Sarah, who made you smile in a way I'd never seen before, became the carefree teenager I'd always wanted you to be, but could never afford to let you be. The day we packed your car for college, I didn't cry. Or rather, I did. But they were different tears. Not tears of loss or fear or regret. Tears of completion. Of a job well done. Of having raised a man who was ready for the world. "Are you going to be okay?" you asked as we loaded the last box into your trunk. "Are you kidding? I'm going to be amazing. I'm going to eat 3 meals a day, go to all my doctor's appointments, maybe even join that book club at work I've been avoiding. I'm going to learn how to live for myself." You hugged me tight. "Call me every day?" "Every other day. You need space to figure out who you are without me hovering." "I already know who I am," you said. "I'm your son." "That's never going to change." "No," I agreed. "But you're also going to be so much more than that. And I can't wait to watch." I stood in the parking lot of our apartment building and watched you drive away. Watched until your car disappeared around the corner. Watched until I couldn't see you anymore but could still feel you, connected to me by something stronger than distance or time or even blood. Letting go is an act of love too. Maybe the hardest one. If you've ever had to let someone you love grow beyond you, beyond your reach, into their own life, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all need permission to grow, and we all need to know that love doesn't end when proximity does. It's been 3 years since that Christmas Eve conversation. 3 years since you asked me the question that changed everything. 3 years since we stopped pretending and started healing. You're in your junior year of college now. Engineering major? Exactly like you planned. You've got a girlfriend, not Sarah, someone new, someone who makes you even happier. You've got internships lined up and job prospects and a future that gets brighter every day. And me? I'm 5 years cancer-free as of last month. I got promoted at work. I have actual savings in my bank account. I joined that book club, and also a yoga class, and I've been on 3 dates with a man named David, who works in IT and thinks I'm beautiful, even with my chemo curls and the scars on my stomach. I learned to cook for myself, to eat without guilt, to take up space in the world without apologizing, to accept that being a good mother doesn't mean destroying myself, that loving you with my whole heart doesn't mean having nothing left for myself. We talk twice a week, video calls usually. You tell me about your classes, your friends, your dreams. I tell you about my life, my actual life, not just the curated version where everything's fine and I don't need anything. Last month, you came home for Thanksgiving. You walked into our apartment, same apartment, but different now, better somehow, and looked around like you were seeing it for the first time. You redecorated, you observed. I did. Bought some new furniture. Got rid of some old things that were just taking up space. It looks good, Mom. Really good. We cooked together. Turkey and all the sides, and I ate until I was full. Actually full, not pretending full. And so did you. And there was enough for everyone. Abundance instead of scarcity. Joy instead of survival. After dinner, we sat on the new couch with coffee and pie, and you said, "Can I ask you something?" Always. That question I asked you, Christmas Eve 3 years ago, about whether you regretted feeding me instead of yourself. I remember. What would you say if I asked you that question now? I set down my coffee and looked at you. This man you'd become, healthy and happy and whole. This person I'd grown from nothing but love and determination and stubborn refusal to give up. I'd say the same thing I said then. I told you. But I'd add something. What? I'd say that feeding you taught me that I deserved to be fed too. That sacrifice and self-destruction aren't the same thing. That loving you completely doesn't mean loving myself incompletely. That the best gift I can give you isn't my suffering, it's my wholeness. You nodded slowly, tears gathering in your eyes. I like that answer better. Me too. Mom? Yeah, baby? Thank you. For everything. For loving me enough to sacrifice. And for loving me enough to stop sacrificing. For teaching me that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. That asking for help isn't weakness. That we're all worthy of being cared for, even when we're the ones who usually do the caring. I reached over and took your hand, still fitting perfectly in mine, even though yours were bigger and stronger and bore the marks of your own labor now. You know what I'm most proud of? I asked. What? That you learned the lesson I had to almost die to learn. That you understand, at 20, what took me 38 years to figure out. That you'll be a better man, a better partner, maybe someday a better father, because you saw me break and you saw me heal, and you learned from both. That's the real inheritance, isn't it? You said. Not money or things or even education. It's the lessons, the wisdom earned through pain, the understanding that love is complicated and beautiful, and sometimes it means feeding someone else, and sometimes it means letting yourself be fed. Exactly. We sat there in comfortable silence, holding hands, two people who'd survived poverty and sickness and fear and doubt, who'd made it to the other side still loving each other, still whole, still here. And in that moment, I had my final answer to your question. Did I ever regret feeding you instead of myself? No. Not for 1 second. Not even the seconds that nearly killed me. Because feeding you taught me about love in its purest form. And learning to feed myself taught me about love in its most sustainable form. And somewhere between those two truths, I found the balance that saved both our lives. You are my greatest achievement, my proudest moment, my most important work. And I would make every choice again, the good ones and the mistakes, because they all led us here. To this moment. To you, thriving. To me, surviving. To us. Together but separate. Connected but free. Loving each other without destroying ourselves in the process. That's what I would tell any mother listening to this story. That's what I would tell anyone who's ever had to choose between themselves and someone they love. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is sacrifice. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop sacrificing. The wisdom is in knowing the difference. The courage is in acting on that knowledge. And the grace is in forgiving yourself for all the times you got it wrong while you were figuring it out. So no, baby. I never regretted feeding you. But I'm grateful I finally learned to feed myself too. Because we both deserve to be full. We both deserve to be whole. And that right there, is the real happy ending. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that love is complicated and beautiful, and sometimes it breaks you, just so it can teach you how to heal, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own story of sacrifice and survival, because we're all in this together, trying to figure out how to love without losing ourselves, how to give without giving up, how to be enough for others while still being enough for ourselves. And if you're listening from your car or your kitchen or your bedroom late at night, wondering if you're doing it right, if you're loving hard enough, if your sacrifices matter, they do. You do, and you deserve to eat too. This is Voices Female Black, reminding you that your story matters, your struggle matters, and you are never, ever alone.